Hello again, this is Professor Luchin with Lecture 4 for Safety 388, Occupational Standards and Applications. In this lecture, I'm going to discuss analytical approaches and investigative techniques, and then we'll get into a little bit about requirements for workers' compensation and for OSHA recordability. I want you to read chapters 4 through 6, and I'm going to talk about those quite a bit, but please visit the links and read the PDFs that are posted on the Canvas page. Don't you just love the show WALL-E? That's one of my favorites. My kids used to watch it all the time. WALL-E. So in chapter 4, Oakley does a really interesting job, good job, it's interesting focus on doing a systematic and exhaustive process. I totally agree. I think root cause analysis is the only approach we should use to investigate accidents. And it starts with defining the problem, which we had discussed before. Gain the knowledge, analyze the facts, develop corrective action. And then if we were to practice a quality management approach, what we'd be doing is then we'd be checking to see if what we're implementing is correct. And then go back and maybe redefine the problem, gain additional knowledge, analyze additional facts. And it's that continuous cycle that you achieve success for your safety program. Love Parks and Rec. In chapter 5, he talks about different types of techniques, such as preparation tools for accident investigations. I provided a link to what OSHA has for accident investigations. Made a note down here. Common sense is really not a thing. I know a lot of people do an investigation. Oh, they should have practiced common sense. Common sense would be the shared knowledge. Should we all be, if we all grew up in a vacuum, in which we all were exposed to the same external and mostly the internal factors in development. We don't have that in the real world. So when people say common sense, it's what they knew, but they can't assume that the person knew it. So Burt Macklin, that's what he is. Yeah, FBI, Burt Macklin, that's what it was in Parks and Rec. In chapter 6, he provides the analytical techniques flowchart, which interestingly we're going to be referring to now for the next several lectures because it provides an interesting tree, if you will, of what you could use and what would guide you for the different types of analytical techniques. I think this is a great job by Oakley. There is a YouTube video that I'd like you to watch. It's with the Geron Institute. It shows almost like how they did a root cause analysis to get down to what really needed to be corrected in order to mitigate the issues they're experiencing, versus if you took it from a superficial or passive approach, you would to resolved it the way they did it. You should address levels of accountability because each level within an organization has different responsibilities and therefore different perspectives on what should and shouldn't be done. And the benefits here, yeah, pretty clear, pretty straightforward. So from here on out, I'm going to bring this up and show you that as we go through these chapters, how they fit into this model that Oakley provided to us, and he tends to apply it to an overall scenario, accident scenario, of a supervisor who falls off of a ladder, suffers a broken arm and a concussion in a warehouse. And so I think it's good to connect to that, though connecting to any experiences you have is also good. I've been discussing for the first few lectures about avoiding blame, focusing on learning and preventing reoccurrence is what it should say. Cognitive bias is similar to us thinking common sense is something everybody knows. But as you can see on the screen, you've already read it, I'm sure, that we all make mistakes because we view things through our own lens, and that lens is specific to us and not how other people see things. And therefore, it makes it comfortable for us to say, well, that person who got hurt, they chose that behavior. They chose to do that and they got hurt. They got what they deserved. And that's not the way it is. We have to fight against that urge because it's not real and it doesn't benefit the program. It doesn't benefit the worker. It doesn't benefit the company by adopting that mindset. And so we must do everything we can to hold back our cognitive bias and educate others in the workplace to recognize its influence and try to mitigate it themselves. In Wisconsin, the Department of Workforce Development houses and enforces our workers' compensation laws. Workers' compensation is state laws, whereas for OSHA, if you remember, there's some states are federal states, so they just use the federal laws. Some states are state-run states, so they adopt the laws, and sometimes they develop their own. For work comp, it's a state thing. And when someone gets injured and they're going to file a claim, you begin paperwork. And that paperwork in Wisconsin is the employer's first report of injury or disease, also called WKC-12E, something that you can actually take a look at. This is something that is required by law to file in Wisconsin if you are covered by work comp, which almost everybody is. It's just only in very rare occasions. You start the paperwork, and then that way, whatever medical treatment or care the worker receives from whatever facility, healthcare facility, the policyholder gets billed for it, and then it's paid directly. And then if they lose time because they have to stay home and recover or go through forms of rehabilitation, that is also tracked, and payments are made as required by law. I think it's kind of interesting. Here's a basic look at it. Oh, no. Yeah. So this is the DWD WKC-12, WCK-12, WKC-12. Over on the right, on the other hand, these are the OSHA injury and illness forms. We start with the 301, which is the incident report. Now, in some states, what you can do is you can combine these. And in many cases, when you purchase a work comp policy from an insurer, their first report of injury, illness, disease will contain the same fields as the 301, and then therefore you only have to fill out one form. If it's different or lacks what's here, then you may have to fill out both. The 300 then contains the information from the 301, so each row of the 300 has information about that incident, and then at the end of the year you add up the columns for the 300 and you enter it in 300A, and then it's posted in the workplace. If you go to the OSHA website and go to topics and go to record keeping requirements, you can have access to all the forms and all the information about 29 CFR 1904, which is the record keeping standard for OSHA. So everything's right there. So please go take a look at that. Here's what the link shows. Here are the basic requirements if you want to look at the forms. Companies are now required to submit their 300As by March 2nd, covering the previous year. And then if you have a fatality in the workplace, you must contact OSHA within 8 hours. Or if an employee incurs an amputation, loss of eye, or hospitalization, which they're admitted, for something other than observation, you have to contact OSHA within 24 hours. And so if you click on here, there is an 800 number, there is a website you can go to, or you can actually look up your local area office and contact them directly, which is what I recommend you do. The purpose of record keeping, really, the underlying purpose of record keeping is there's an accident. You need to learn, you need to investigate to find out what are the root causes and what changes can you make in the work environment to try and prevent it from happening again. Sure, if you really want to get down to brass tacks for the work comp accident investigation, it's compensability, because that's what it's there for. That things get paid properly, that they're not being frauded, things like that. From OSHA's perspective, it's so that there's a record of it. And it's more of what happened and not why it happened. So the bar is really low when it comes to what is required for record keeping. So I think that employers should go above and beyond to understand what we can do to better design the work so that people aren't exposed to hazards, that they're not put in a position where they have to decide whether, I can get this done unsafely or I might get in trouble for not getting it done on time. So we want to try to avoid that. Who is required to keep records? Any employer who has 11 or more employees at any point during the year. Or if you're in a high hazard industry and you have to go to that particular link we were just on, and there's a list. What's required? Well, first of all, was it work related? If it is, okay, go to the next one. Is it a new case? And what they mean by that is if a worker gets injured, goes and gets seen by the doctor, but you bring them back to the workplace in limited capacity or restricted status, where the doctor's like, can't lift this much, can't stand for this long, but they re-aggravate, well, that's not a new case. And so you would actually, any changes in the condition or time away would be augment the original case. But given that the person is 100% or has been given a clean bill of health due to a prior injury, then it's a new case. And then does it meet the further requirements, which are death, loss of consciousness, days away from work, restricted work duty or work transfer, or medical treatment beyond first aid. And there is a section in the standard that talks about that, and I think it'd blow your mind. And that's actually the area that people argue or debate about quite a bit, is let's try and keep our OSHA recordability low, so therefore let's try and make all injuries first aid. That's not preventing them from reoccurring. That's just trying to look good. And I know that some people, that's the way they practice. I don't practice that way. I don't think that's ethical. I'd like to record and investigate even near misses, because the information that I collect, the more I learn about what we can do to mitigate those causal factors, the better our solutions are going to be, better our control strategies, more likely we are going to prevent it from happening again, versus if we're really focused on just trying to not make things recordable or not contacting OSHA, we're not really improving anything. Here's the 301 form. I actually wrote a chapter for a textbook chapter for, and I can't remember what it was for. Was it for the new Safety Professionals Handbook? In which I broke down the 301 here as compared to what we should be attempting to learn, and showed that this is deficient. I really hope I get selected for the National Advisory Committee for OSHA so I can bring this forward. This needs to be fixed. And here's the 300A. As you can see on the bottom, it says here, post from February 1st, April 30th. So between those dates, whenever a compliance officer goes into a workplace, they're looking for this to be posted. And this is the annual summary of the columns from the 300, along with the company information, and then someone from the company, an executive, needs to sign it, indicating that they read it. So the changes for the contact for fatality versus inpatient hospitalization, amputation, that's new. That changed a few years ago, which is why I still have that there. And Dr. Michaels, he's not the head of OSHA now. He was when Obama was when the Obama administration was in charge. So it was, the idea was good, but unfortunately the way employers sometimes view it, it seems safer not to try and limit what you report to OSHA, because you may be afraid you might get inspected, which I guess maybe it's possible, even though it shouldn't be. Here's access to the forms in Excel, which I actually had used when I was working at the State Health and Family Services. So I think one way to really improve the record-keeping process is to make a conscious effort, a visible effort, to not blame the worker, to really look beyond them, to include them in the process, and they should feel comfortable and cared for and treated fairly in that process. And in a way, what we're trying to do is mitigate our natural tendencies to blame, or our natural tendencies to go to what's an easy answer versus the right answer to correct things. The incidence rates, when we in lecture 2, we looked at the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and some of the non-fatal injury and illness, or the SOI reports, referred to incidence rates. And the calculation is the number of recordable cases times by 200,000 divided by hours worked. And all those numbers come from the actual 300 log. The Bureau of Labor Statistics, they're compressing an entire industry's worth of 300 numbers together, 300 log numbers together, but that, in essence, that's what it represents. When I worked at the state, I redesigned the 300 log and standardized it so that I could get more accurate representation of incidence rates, and I also calculated them on a quarterly basis and on a calendar year basis. And you can see here that from calendar year 2003 when I started the analysis to first quarter of 2007 when I actually left because I graduated, we had a pretty consistent decline in incidence rates. So by tracking, except for the one here, this one right here, it's kind of going all over the place. I'm not sure what happened there, but that would actually be worthy of investigation. So my closing comments, wrapping this up here, I try not to get caught up in the rigmarole of record keeping. There's a better way to do it. I'd rather not focus too much on trying to limit what gets recorded, but rather to get more recorded. Therefore, the focus should be on involving the workers and the supervisors in understanding how we can redesign the work to mitigate what might cause or expose workers to harm, and in a way making the job design better. Focus on the work itself too, so that we don't want to implement safety controls that make it more difficult for the worker to be successful in their job. We want them to be productive. They want to be successful. They want to get things done. So designing to get the job done easier and safer is really our goal. I really do believe that 80% of the effort should go into a balanced, fair incident investigation. The reporting and all that stuff comes afterwards. So again, the focus is let's get the workers involved. In order to get the workers involved, they have to trust us, see that we care, and we're going to treat them fairly. Focus on that, everything else gets better, versus having the other stuff go awry, and then now you're not going to get as good results. So that's what I got. Please check out the links and the PDFs I provided, but I hope that this kind of gave you some insight that record keeping is something that is required, but at its minimum, it's just not enough, especially under today's standards.